who deep down are you really?
Mm-hmm.
What is it intrinsic in you, which is at your core? And if you can identify that, that's your sort of, I suppose that's your superpower. That's your extraordinary capacity. And it may not be conventional. No, it may not be that your superpower is you can write code faster than anybody else, or you can create extraordinary brands. It might be something else that's not recognized by conventional career processes.
Look for feedback from professional colleagues as well as perhaps friends, because there are key strengths in all of us that sometimes we just don't see or realize, but is blindingly obvious to those around us. And when they articulate on those, they like first thing front of mind that when I need this or we have this challenge, I just think of you for this. It's just something you do brilliantly.
And there are portfolio executives I'm working with who are making a very good living with 4 or 5 clients. And they're keeping those clients for 4 or 5 years. In the whole world of people who might need a fractional finance director or fractional head of HR or whatever it is, you're not going to struggle. And if you niche it down, so you only want people who are within 45 minutes of where you live and who are working in knowledge-based industries and who are high-growth professionals, you're not going to struggle.
Welcome to the Fractional Frontier, where we explore the future of leadership in today's evolving business landscape. I'm Lorraine Carter, here with Charles McLachlan, and every week we dive deep into the world of high-performing fractional executives and the businesses that leverage them.
Whether you're an experienced fractional leader or a business decision maker seeking top-tier talent, this is the place to be for actionable insights, strategies, and stories from the front lines of fractional leadership.
Today, we're focusing on successful client identification. Charles, can you briefly tell us about how you've developed your views on successful client identification?
Yeah, so I'm talking about this from the context of the fractional executive themselves. How do they successfully identify their clients? And I've been working as a founder with founders and with executive leaders for almost all of my career. I've also been involved in recruiting, sales, and relationship building in all of my roles. What I've come to believe is that successful client identification starts with a deep commitment to understanding the product you offer and then relating it to a distinctive niche.
So, indeed, without successful client identification to match your brand and product or service promise, all sales and marketing activities are largely a waste of time and money. So, as a committed brand strategist, I believe it's really critical to have a very clear understanding of the profile of your primary target audience, your ideal client, coupled with a very strong value proposition that makes it really clear to your prospect what you have to offer, how it's different to all the other options and competitors in the marketplace, and why you are the absolutely perfect first choice for them. So for our listeners who may not be familiar, Charles, can you explain why successful client identification is so important to the fractional executive and their clients?
Yes, I think there are 2 key things that I would say about this. The first thing is, as a fractional executive, you don't want to spend a lot of time finding new clients, enabling people to buy your services. You want to spend your time serving clients, making an impact, and making a difference. So that's crucial to ensure that the clients you attract are the ones who most want to work with you. And then on the client side, if it's obvious to them that you're absolutely the right person for their organization, they're going to have that trust to engage you intimately in their organization, even though you're only there part-time.
And that actually comes back to fundamental principles when we look at building a brand, whether it's product, service, or even a personal brand. You have to have absolute clarity around the value you offer and the outcomes you're going to deliver for that client. And you need to be able to articulate it so that it's blindingly obvious to your prospect and they get it within 30 seconds. And in order to do that, you have to also have a very clear picture, ideally actually written down, documented, filed, or stored in some format that really clearly identifies the key factors of that ideal target audience so that you can very much fine tune to what you have to offer. Because this is not mass market delivery. This is very bespoke. Because let's not lose sight of the fractional role. This is working not only as a highly experienced, highly informed expert in a fractional role capacity or portfolio executive capacity with a client where you are helicoptering and you are giving them the value and experience and of your experience very quickly, but you're also involved in actually deploying and activating that very effectively throughout the business. So in order for you to be able to, because typically a fractional executive will work with between 6 to 12 clients, and really then they can't take any more. They're fully occupied at that stage. But to deliver very effectively, you've got to have absolute clarity over the target audience, the senior leaders you're working with, the broader team, the niche you're operating in, and what it is you're going to bring to market. So those principles of client identification apply as much in the context that you're talking about, Charles, as it does in any value or brand proposition.
Yeah, and let's just give you a cautionary tale. So there's a guy that I met through LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
really interesting person. Started out, left school at 16, started out as an apprentice, built himself up, worked for a number of really high caliber brands within the, I suppose, security and risk services area.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got to a stage where he wasn't enjoying it very much anymore. And he
Mm,
thought, I'll go and buy a franchise
mm,
so that I can help small business owners to exit their businesses. So he
mm,
spent whatever it cost and, and got somebody to do lead generation. And by the time I got to him, he really had lost his hope for building that business. And it wasn't because he wasn't qualified. He got an
mm,
engineering degree, he'd done an MBA, but it was because authentically who he was as a person
mm,
and the people he would relate to and the people he's wanting to work with were
mm,
incompatible with the identity he was projecting. So he was projecting that I'm an expert consultant who will help you sell your business.
mm,
And as an expert consultant, he'd go in and persuade them to sign up to a program and make a big investment for that small business. And
mm,
he'd produce a lot of documents and then try and lead them through the process.
mm,
But actually, as an individual, his real strength was he knew everything about how to get men in vans at the right place at the right times, do the right thing, and make money for the business that ran them. So I
wow.
said to him, no, why are you presenting yourself in this suit as though, you were sort of an unknown uncle turning up at a funeral when really you're a guy who relates to the lads in the vans, usually
Mm,
lads. Um, you would roll up your sleeves if you weren't wearing a polo shirt and you go out and you make things happen.
mm,
Redefine your brand, redefine your proposition, and redefine who your niche is.
mm.
And now he's having conversations with people who see him as the sort of white van man hero who's going to turn their business around. It's really exciting. But he just ended up being seduced into do something that wasn't him.
So that really is almost a story as much to do with his personal brand as much it is the business brand he was aligning himself with. And it sounds like They were both a little bit misaligned and really misrepresentative, not only of what I call his individual strengths and core offering, but also he bought a license as a franchisee to something that wasn't necessarily the right fit in terms of alignments either. And consequently, he just wasn't attracting the right ideal target audience at all.
Yeah. And the problem is a lot of franchise sellers
Mm,
all their money when the franchise is sold.
mm,
And so they don't necessarily have the right incentives to enable people to make a living out of it because
yeah.
most of their money comes up front.
Yeah, which is very challenging then if you're buying into that. So I was about to ask you, what issues have you seen fractional executives grapple with when it comes to successful client identification? And I think you've answered some of that now, but is there anything else you'd like to add to that? Because that's a fairly unique scenario and will be unusual because that wouldn't necessarily be the typical route that a fractional portfolio executive would go, where they would buy into a franchise.
Yeah, he
Challenges.
bought into a franchise because he didn't understand there was an opportunity to be a portfolio executive, frankly.
Ah, okay.
But there are portfolio executives I talk to who do buy into franchises and doesn't necessarily work for them. But I
Mm,
think there's something else. My background, I have worked in consulting. I'll
mhm,
admit to that.
mhm,
I've apologized to lots of people about it, but I have worked for big consulting. And many of the people that I therefore meet have been consultants. And
mm,
what they present is, well, I can do anything for anyone. Now, I've got all of this expertise, all of this knowledge. And so they want to put out this story that I can do this and this and this and this and this. And I've done it here, 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 and here.
mm,
But all it means is that people don't think, oh, this person can do anything for anybody.
mm,
They reinterpret that, they internalize it as this person could do nothing for nobody.
mm,
And what I've seen is when people have that razor sharp focus of their brand identity and their target market, their ideal customer, and start to go out to that, if they're very, very intentional about that and very consistent about that, then actually they get opportunistic requests where people say, I see you do this really well. Could you do that?
mm,
Because you do this, maybe you could do that.
mm,
And so, although I encourage them to continue to focus on that very simple, narrow brand offer to a very simple, narrow client audience, actually, by doing that in an extraordinary way, they get all of these other opportunities.
and that also comes back to, because I'm correlating this so much with brand, whether it's product, service, or personal brand. It comes back to that really fundamental principle of every brand, whether it's a product or a service or a personal brand, needs to have something of that Marmite factor, whereby if you try to be everything to everybody in the middle and you're a bit vanilla, it's not really clear to anybody what it is your core specialism or real strength is. Whereas you really need to absolutely magnetize and attract that ideal audience and actually repel those who are not the ideal fit, which means your brand has got to have a strong like dislike factor as opposed to something that's generally appealing and a bit bland, because it's simply not going to have the kind of strength it could or should have or stand out or differentiate enough. So, what kind of frameworks and approaches are you using, Charles, to help fractional executives to successfully identify a really clear client niche for what they have to offer?
Well, it comes back to them really understanding their own identity first.
Mm,
But often people are unfamiliar with really reflecting on their own identity.
mm,
So when I start working with a fractional executive for the first time, I ask them to think about 5 dimensions with which to shape their niche.
mm-hmm,
And I find this works really quite well.
mm,
So the first thing is, I think as a fractional executive, you need to have a relatable job title.
mm,
So if you just say I'm a fractional um, head of fun,
Mm.
That doesn't necessarily relate to the business world very well.
No.
But if you say I'm a fractional chief revenue officer or finance director or whatever it is, then they can relate that to jobs that they understand. So
Yeah.
that's the first bit. What is the job title that you want to be recognized?
Yeah.
There are some job titles where actually you can define the role when you turn up with the client. So if you're
Mm.
a fractional chief operating officer, then COOs basically do all the stuff that nobody else wants to do. And in different contexts, that's different things.
Mm.
So you can go into a client as a fractional COO, and sometimes you can cherry pick. I really want to do the product management and the HR and the customer service operations and so on.
Mm.
Or you might be in another client where you say, what I really want to do is make sure that marketing and finance and project management are aligned. So
Mm.
if you are that wide generalist, then there are different opportunities with different clients, but you don't have to project that in your niche.
Mm.
The second thing is, because for me, LinkedIn is the most accessible business database for
Mhm.
people, then I ask people, what is the size of organization that you're going to most enjoy working with?
Mm.
And that usually is best articulated by the head count. Because
Yes.
working with an organization, the number of people in it is the most powerful determinant of what it's going to feel like for you to be there.
Mhm.
Um, and then I talk to people about life stage. So, do
Mhm.
you want to work with a startup?
Mm.
Crudely, for me, a startup is a business where they're still trying to work out what business they're in. And there's that 2 or 3 years where they are finding out what their business is.
Mhm.
Or is it a scale up? They've got that first client, they've got initial penetration, and now it's about maximizing that.
Mhm.
Or is it a scale out? Scale out is where they moving from a single product in a single market to perhaps multiple products and perhaps multiple markets. And then once they've got to that stage, they move much more into sort of what I call optimizing. So any growth is incremental or through acquisition.
I'm just reflecting for our listeners who are potential buyers of this kind of expertise from fractional executives. Typically, what sort of headcount is the typical fractional executive working with in terms of the size of the organization?
Well, it seems to vary enormously by role.
Mhm. Okay.
So if you're going to be a CIO, chief
Mm.
information officer, you're
Mhm.
probably not going to have that role in a business which has got less than 200 or 300 employees because they're just relying upon a facilities management company looking after it.
Mhm.
If you are going to be part-time head of DEI,
Mm.
again, that might be a much larger organization where you can deliver real value in I don't know, a law firm with 30 or 40 partners.
Mm.
But if you're going to be a fractional HR person, then you can start create fantastic value in knowledge-based organizations when they've got 11 to 25 people. So it
Right.
does depend on the role, and it also depends on how you want to engage with the role.
So if we're helping our potential listeners who are buyers identify, that gives them a scope of reference. Because really, the reason why they're bringing somebody in with this kind of expertise is because it's giving them access to really high performing senior leadership that's got a huge amount of experience behind them, but they're getting access to it at a very, very affordable, putting it in its simplest terms, really extremely good value because they don't have to commit to somebody on a full time basis. They might have that person working with them once a week or a couple of times a month, but that person is bringing immense value at a very high delivery level in a very concentrated time frame.
Absolutely. And I think one of the sort of ways of thinking about this as a buyer is there a role where I'm putting a junior manager in,
Mm.
but actually that function is going to build, and I need to have a fractional executive who can then build that function.
Mm,
So just to give you a marketing example, I've seen a lot of small businesses, they get to a stage where they think, I need to do something about marketing. But they've gone out somewhere and they bought a website, and they may have bought a bit of Google search, but they now think, okay, I need a marketing manager. I need somebody who's just going to look after that stuff.
mm,
But actually the marketing manager, they may be extremely good at doing what they are asked to do, but they have no idea how to buy marketing services. They have very little idea how to build a marketing strategy. They don't understand how to measure marketing effectiveness.
mm.
And they probably see marketing through the lens of whatever tool they've been given. So
Which, yeah, that's really what you're describing as somebody who's at a junior level with a less strategic capability, who's much more operational, and just needs the benefit of that senior skill set and experience. And if I reflect on my own um, experience working in this capacity, uh, yes, you bring that strategic input to the table. You might work with the leadership team through a facilitate a process to evaluate what needs to be changed or to scale and grow. But part of that is then, well, operationally, the team may not be there, so you are rolling up your sleeves and really helping with the implementation and putting some systems and frameworks in place for ensuring that's being consistently done. And then also importantly, upskilling the team. And often that team might not have formally trained or formally qualified marketeers, but that doesn't mean you can't achieve really successful results, because with the right mentorship and training and somebody who's really keen and interested, they could become an extremely effective critical part of the team in terms of activating and deploying on that actual strategy once they're given the direction and guide and frameworks to work within.
absolutely. I'll give you one other example. So there are organizations that have a very strong project orientation.
Mm,
And so they see anything they do in their organization as a project.
mm,
And they have lots of people they call project managers. Um, but what they really need is somebody who's going to be their director of programs and projects, who's going to build an effective project management and program management capability, so that all of these individual people who do projects whatever way they like, and all of this explosion where you end up, in an organization which has got 50 different projects going on,
mm,
becomes properly managed. And the 50 project, probably the head of projects would come in and cut 20 of them,
yeah.
and the other 30 they would turn into 2 or 3 high profile programs that are to
Mm,
deliver particular results. And you would not be able to find somebody within your projects community
mm,
who could step up into that role.
yeah.
Also, that kind of heavyweight program manager,
Mm,
you know, there's not a full-time job for them. What you're really doing is in bringing somebody in who can build that capability over time. And now, within that organization, they have excellence in program and project delivery,
mm,
which they didn't have before.
yeah.
Transformational for the organization.
Hugely. And brings a huge amount of efficiencies into play. And kind of probably structures and disciplines that may not be there. And that when you describe that number of projects, that sounds almost like, because the reality of it is most fractional executives will be working with SMEs or SMBs, because once you've grown beyond that actual size, then really larger organizations want that kind of expertise in a full-time capacity. And you're describing that, that's probably borderline in terms of the size of that organization, because then to have that number of projects running sounds like almost getting into a larger, beyond the SME size, really, doesn't it?
Well, it could be, or it could be that, they're an IT services business,
Mm,
and they're running all of these individual projects for their clients, and they've got
mm,
no coherence in the way those run. So if one of their clients wants to have 10 workstations installed, and they
Mm.
set it up as a project, but actually they've no idea how to properly run a project.
It's very interesting in terms of how that can be interpreted from a position, from the position of a buyer who's looking for that kind of experience and expertise. So, when I reflect on some of the questions that have come in from our listeners, one of the questions that comes up frequently is, how can I be sure there are enough potential clients in my niche?
Yeah, and it I think it's the wrong question, to be honest.
Mm,
Um, you talked about 6 to 12 clients. You talked about working in the smaller and medium-sized business arena. You are engaging with a very, very long tail, and you only
mm,
need a very small part of that long tail.
mm,
And there are portfolio executives I'm working with who are making a very good living with 4 or 5 clients,
mm,
and they're keeping those clients for 4 or 5 years. So in the whole world of people who might need a fractional finance director or fractional head of HR or whatever it is,
mm.
you're not going to struggle. And if you niche it down, so you only want people who are within 45 minutes of where you live and who are working in knowledge based industries and who are high growth professionals,
Mm.
um, as an HR person, well, unless you're living in some part of Cumbria where there are very few places, you're not
Mm.
going to struggle.
Yeah.
And with more acceptability of remote working, you don't necessarily have to be so constrained about the geography because you probably only have to go and see your client face to face once a month.
Oh, yeah. And that would even be my experience where I've worked with clients over a number of years and they're in different countries. And we might be working half a day every week, but that's online. And then we physically meet maybe 4 or 5 times a year
So
because
the
we
question
don't
I ask
actually
you about
physically
geography
need
is
to meet.
how much travel would you love to do, which is paid for by your business? And some people say, well, actually, I don't really want to do any travel. I did that, been there,
Mm,
done that, don't want to do that
mm,
anymore. And other people say, I'd love to have a business where, I'm in a different European capital every week and for
mm,
business to fund that.
mm.
And that defines your geography to my mind, not
Yeah.
are there enough clients who want a part-time chief revenue officer in a technology-based business within my immediate location.
And it really then brings it back to that fractional executive has choices to shape the style in which their professional life operates in a way that you could never do in a full-time role. And it also means that that SME business has access to the kind of expertise that if you have operated internationally and globally, that brings huge value to their business, particularly if they have, as a lot of business, particularly if it's tech or SaaS related, where the outlook is international and global. So somebody who has that kind of experience is immensely valuable to the business.
Yeah, but the other side of this is if the fractional executive, the portfolio executive starts with, what am I most going to enjoy doing?
Mm,
Who am I most going to enjoy doing it with?
mm,
Where can I be most passionate about serving a particular kind of client?
mm,
Then that's infectious.
yeah,
So those clients they want to work with will feel that this is not some desperate date trying to get a job because they've run out of money.
yeah,
They'll feel this is an enthusiastic, energized individual who wants to be part of what they're doing and has got lots to offer. Well, who wouldn't buy that?
absolutely. That's very compelling. So, what are some of the questions that typically crop up uh, very frequent for you in this context? Because you've a lot of experience working with a lot of different fractional executives. And what's a classic recurring question that comes up in the context of client identification?
Yeah, I think Well, we've had this request from a listener who wants to know how they can make best use of their existing network.
Mm,
And for people who've had a long life in a corporate setting,
mm,
and most of their networking was about navigating that large corporate organization, that's quite tough
yeah.
because their existing network is not a great fit for the network they want.
Yes.
So, in that context, you have to rethink what your existing network is. And sometimes your existing network is those people on Facebook that you went to college with, or
Mm,
those people that you met when you were doing your professional exams, or
mm,
those people who hang out with you at the golf club, or
mm,
those people that you meet when you're going back and holidaying in the same place again and again. So you have to think about your existing network in a different way. And the other thing that often people ignore is your friends and family are a network. Then you don't have to think about your professionals only.
mm,
So if you ask, your father-in-law or your daughter's fiance, is there anybody you can think of that I could talk to about X?
mm.
If you're very specific, then what they're likely to say is, well, I don't know somebody who does that, but would this person who does the other be interesting to you? And
Yeah.
really, your network is not, as a starting place, the people you're going to sell to. Your existing network is the people who are going to guide you to find the clients that you need.
And that can start with just having those conversations because there's a huge amount of truth in you're only so many degrees relieved, degrees removed from that potential opportunity with having that open conversation.
Yeah. And one of the things that personally I've chosen to do, which I think is good advice for most people actually, is make sure built into your professional life, you have time to waste.
Mm,
Time to waste is time that you are available and you can meet up with people or you can reach out to people or you can connect with people who may not be immediately useful, but
yeah.
are going to be part of a network of people that inform you about the market you work in, introduce you to interesting people who you never come across. You know, why did I meet you, Lorraine? Well, you and I, before we started doing this together, had no connection at all. You weren't part of my friendship network or anything, but we got connected through just saying, oh, Lorraine's an interesting person. Why don't I see if she's happy to have a chat with me?
Mm.
And look, magic happens.
So, how do you see the requirement for niching actually evolving then, Charles?
It's confusing because I think that niching is more and more important in a crowded, noisy world.
Mm, mm,
So being distinctive is more and more important.
yes.
On the other hand, constantly evolving who you are is equally important because you need to grow yourself and you need to grow the kinds of ways that you work with people.
Mm,
Otherwise, you'll end up not in a niche, but in a cul-de-sac.
it's very, very true. And the pace of change, and to coin what can almost be a worn out phrase, is things are changing much faster. And to maintain relevance, to bring value, you really are a lifelong learner.
Yes. But the other thing that I think is it comes back to this identity question.
Mm,
So, who deep down are you really?
mm-hmm,
What is it intrinsic in you, which is at your core, that
mm-hmm.
whatever job you're doing, whoever you're working for, wherever you live, it just starts to happen, starts to come out of you.
Yes.
And that, if you can identify that, that's your sort of, I suppose that's your superpower. That's your uh, extraordinary capacity. And it may not be conventional. No, it may not be that your superpower is, you can write code faster than anybody else, or
Mm,
you can create extraordinary brands. It
mm.
might be something else that's not recognized by conventional career processes or competency models.
And that I think articulates beautifully what I would frequently, if I'm working uh, with a team, with a leadership team or a broader team, or even say like in the last week where I was delivering a keynote specifically around building personal brand aligned to business entity or corporate brand. And getting people to reflect on some key factors, their wow power, their personal strengths. For a lot of us, that's actually difficult to get clear about, and more so depending on your cultural reference point, uh, simply because it's frowned on if you are very uh, effusive in your personal um, articulations around yourself. So put a framework around looking at that, and then actually look for feedback from professional colleagues as well as perhaps friends, because there are key strengths in all of us that sometimes we just don't see or realize, but is blindingly obvious to those around us. And when they articulate on those, they like first thing front of mind that when I need this or we have this challenge, I just think of you for this.
Yeah.
It's just something you do brilliantly.
But the other identity
Yeah.
perspective, I think, is so I get the people I work with to find 10 friends and family,
Mm-hmm.
people they've worked for, and 10
Mm-hmm.
people they worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask them to contact them and answer a very simple question.
Mm-hmm.
What are the 10 things you most like about who I am?
Yeah.
Not what I do,
Yeah.
who I am. So it's not, I like you, Lorraine, because you always buy the first round of drinks at the pub. It's, I like you, Lorraine, because you're the heart and soul of the party.
Mm-hmm.
That's the who I am rather than what I do.
Mm.
And what I've seen again and again is that the answers fall into three groups, really.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that I know about myself that um, many people have said to me before, no surprise there.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that I know about myself, but I didn't know that anybody cared about it. I didn't realize it
Yes.
was important to people.
Yes.
And then the third thing is things I hadn't seen in me, that
Mm-hmm.
people do see.
Yeah.
And that's very exciting.
Yeah.
And then if you link that back into, okay, if I'm going to be a distinctive finance director,
Mm-hmm.
then probably having a character of being careful and being precise and being analytical
Mm-hmm.
isn't very distinctive.
No.
But if you're a finance director and people see you as an optimist
Mm-hmm.
and somebody who has extraordinary hope for the future, maybe in a finance director, that's a little bit more unusual.
And it's about taking those different attributes and really dialing them up in terms of all your communications, whether it's in person in terms of how you articulate, how you behave, how you might contribute or produce thought leadership, how you contribute in terms of how you work with your clients and their teams. But a consistent pattern, consistency is really critical in every brand context, whether it's personal or product or service. And having that consistently, but when you have a level of awareness around those key attributes, which are your wow power effectively, and then amplifying them relevantly, and then that sits as the halo around the core expertise you bring to then you're starting to build differentiation that is very compelling for the right prospective or existing client.
Yeah. And that feels to me like, great advice on how to focus your brand identity,
Mm,
bringing that out consistently and
mm,
dialing up your distinctives,
mm,
and helping people to see how you show up.
absolutely. Uh, So my recommendation would be for anybody who hasn't given this a huge amount of thought is to go back and put some effort into reflecting on some of those key elements we've just shared, because you'll be amazed at just how powerful they are. And do put it down, document it so you can reflect back on it, because if it's all sitting in your head, it's very hard to get clarity and then to actually implement and activate on that.
Yeah. And if you're a buyer looking for deep expertise from a fractional executive, then it'll be so much easier to engage with somebody who knows who they are, knows their strengths, knows the kind of people they want to relate to, knows how they want to work. And if
Mm.
they can't project that to you in their LinkedIn profile or the way they communicate, then maybe that's a riskier appointment than you want.
Thank you so much, Charles, for sharing your experiences of successful client identification. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you and learn more about your support of fractional executives?
Yes, it's very simple. Just look for portfolioexecutive.biz. Um, I talk about portfolio executives because that's the work style that I see people should aspire to. Buyers want fractional executives because they don't want a whole one.
Absolutely. So be sure to follow us on LinkedIn for more exclusive content and catch the edited episode on all major platforms. And don't forget to subscribe. And if you've enjoyed today's discussion, leave us a review or share the episode with your network. Thanks for exploring the fractional frontier with us, where leadership knows no boundaries.